This is a Hot Pie Original. Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to the DNP-CD Sports Podcast presented by Oddsshark. I am Chad Fisher alongside my co-host, Tony Farmer. Tony, how you doing today, brother?
I'm doing awesome today, Chad, because we have an awesome guest lined up.
I'm super excited about this. If you are a fan of the 49er teams, you know who this guy is. And if you're not, and you're in our generation, you've been watching college and professional football, you hear this guy call games all the time as well.
Yeah, it's going to be a great show, man.
It's going to be a great show. Can't wait. We got so many interesting questions we want to ask this guy.
For sure.
But before we get into that, we want to tell you a little bit about Oddsshark.
Absolutely. Oddsshark is your source for the latest odds from leading authorities, expert editorial content, the latest sports news, and detailed matchup picks. Looking for statistics and trends for an upcoming game? Oddsshark has that too. And the best part of all, folks, it's absolutely free. In-depth expert analysis, odds, and trends to make the sharp game day picks. They've got decades of stats in their databases, and their insiders give you takes so hot they sizzle. They're your one-stop shop for all your odds info on sports and pop culture events.
Yeah, so if you want to get a better understanding of the odds and the math behind the numbers, how the line is set, why the lines move during the week on the NFL odds list, Oddsshark will give you all the tools you need. They're a proven industry powerhouse. Oddsshark has info from around the globe, giving you the chance to access the best sports odds on the planet. Whether you want to check out tonight's football odds, this week's hockey or basketball trends, or anything in between, head on over to Oddsshark and start thinking like a shark today.
And speaking of Oddsshark, our next betting segment brought to you by Oddsshark for a few minutes before we introduce Randy Cross. Let's jump into it. What's going on in the sports betting world today, Chad?
You've been hitting you've been hot on the bets, man, lately, right?
It's exciting. It always feels good when you can put a betting recommendation out on Twitter, on the DNP-CD Twitter page, and it hits. It's always fun to do that. We're 2-0 now, by the way, right? Because we hit Trey Lance at plus money, and then our second foray into it. So I just want to explain the genesis of how this all happened. So I'm on the Oddsshark page, and I'm looking at the odds, and in the left-hand column, they have what the games open at. And I see the Boston Bruins and Washington is at negative 115 opening, and now it's at negative 180. And I'm like, whoa, what happened? You know, there's only one reason that lines move like that, and it's because of liability, and the books are going to be protecting themselves. So I said either some news dropped, or for some reason, everybody has been stacking up on Washington, or both. So I dug into the news a little bit, see what's going on, and I see that the Bruins have announced there's like literally 14 players, including starters, are not playing for the Bruins. And so I said, 180 is a big change from 115, but it's not enough. And so I said, let's go ahead and put a wager down on that. I recommended it on the DNP-CD channel. And then after I did, I saw the line move to like negative 190. I saw on Oddsshark it move to negative 195. So I knew that we were getting closing line value going into that. We got a good price. Not as good as the original. I wish I saw it sooner. I wish I was on Oddsshark sooner. But I knew that we were getting good closing line value. And 2-1. I meant to talk about this last week on the show with Grant Cohn because it was more recent. But just a great example of how that website can be a useful tool for you.
And a great example of how we've got it all, man. We got awesome interviews and everything like that. And we've also got some nice little betting tips and shit. You can make some money following at DNP-CD Sports on Twitter.
2-0, baby.
2-0, baby.
Absolutely.
Let's see if we can get to 3-0 or 4-0. You don't want to be putting any of my predictions on there because that average is going to come down real damn quick, man. I'll tell you that right now. One thing I noticed on Oddsshark is that they just recently announced the Tyson Fury Anthony Joshua fight that's going to take place August 15th in Saudi Arabia. I'm a huge boxing fan, and I'm a huge Tyson Fury fan as well. And so that's really intriguing to me right now. I went to Oddsshark last night. I encourage you to do the same thing. Go to oddsshark.com/boxing. They've got a great little write-up on the fight and everything like that, and how these two perform against being underdogs and everything like that. And so right now, opening lines, they got Fury at minus 175, Joshua at plus 145. I think that's like an interesting thing to get on to.
Yeah.
It's going to be a big fight. I was talking to a friend of mine last night, and we're saying, like, dude, this might be the biggest heavyweight fight in, 20 some years, since Tyson Holyfield, you know? So It's going to be a massive, massive fight. Everyone's going to be watching this thing. Well, I'm going to have like a little party at the crib.
Nice.
You're welcome to come on over, man.
I like it.
Pound some beers and watch a great fight, man. But I'm gonna throw some money down on Fury.
Nice. Okay. It's going to be interesting to see how that line moves because, like you said, the fight is until August.
Yeah.
And so there's going to be fluctuation, and some people like to chase that line movement, and some people like to say, "Well, all the money is going toward this guy, so I'm going to follow it." And are you just sort of chasing fool's gold at that point?
Yeah.
It's a mirage, or do people have inside information? Are these wise bettors? So I always like to try to differentiate when I see line movement like this. Is this public money? Or is this the big guys that know what they're doing and making these bets? So it's interesting to see for sure.
Yeah, definitely. And then one little tidbit I want to give is I'm a big Cleveland sports fan and everything like that. Cleveland Indians have been playing really well lately, and so I'm looking at their odds to win the AL Central. And they opened at 55-1, and now it's come down a little bit. So now it's 42.5, 35 on some different sites. I'm thinking about throwing a little bit of money down, maybe $20, $30, $40 on the Indians to win the AL Central. They've been playing really well. Bats have woken up a little bit. Their pitching is good as always. It's always top notch. Shane Bieber he's had some great years, and this year already, I think he has. I saw watching the game yesterday. Through his first 7 starts of the season, he had more strikeouts than just about everybody. I think they're the only people that are ahead of him through first 7 starts of the season. In a season where more strikeouts was like the top pitchers in the game, like Roger Clemens and stuff like that. So maybe it's wishful thinking, but I'm hoping that the Indians come through and have another good year. We'll see.
I can't hate on. I mean, it's always tough when you're betting on your team, right? I mean, it's how much of this is my heart, how much of this is my brain, right?
Most of it.
So that's fair. But you got Terry Francona too as your manager, and that guy's got some experience in pennant races, and he's
solid every year.
Yeah.
We've always had a solid team since Tito came in.
Yep.
And we don't have a very high payroll. I mean, there's a couple guys in Major League that make more money than our entire team, so but that's what you got to do in your small market, man. You got to do what you can. We're not the Yankees or anything like that, or the Red Sox. So we got like a $45 million payroll, what I mean? But so far so good anyway. So
Absolutely.
This has been the betting segment presented by Oddsshark on the DNP-CD Sports Podcast. Tony, let's go ahead and bring our guest in right now.
Yeah, let's do it.
Our guest today is a 3-time Super Bowl champion. He was a second-round pick and a 3-time All-Pro with the San Francisco 49ers. He played 13 years in the NFL and was on the field for the catch, one of the most iconic plays in NFL history. He was inducted into the College Football Hall of Fame in 2011. He's a former All-American at UCLA, where he also played rugby. He's been a sports broadcaster since 1989, and currently calls games for CBS. And he also holds the Crespi Carmelite High School shot put record of 67 and 6.5 inches.
Woo.
Please welcome to the DNP-CD Sports Podcast, Randy Cross. Randy, thanks for coming on the show, brother. We really appreciate it.
No worries at all. That guy sounds really versatile.
He is versatile, man. He's got a record that still stands in high school. That's pretty impressive, man.
Yeah, well, considering when it was, and you were nice enough not to mention the year, I will. That was around April to May of 1972.
Oh, wow.
It's got a good memory too.
So getting ready to be 50 years.
Yeah, so. Wow. That's amazing. It still stands, brother. That's an awesome accomplishment. I'd be telling everybody about that if I was you.
Well, fortunately, I did more than that after that. So
yeah.
Just a little
bit. Yeah. But Randy, most people from my generation know you as a sports broadcaster. I've always, of course, we see you on games every Sunday. And you've always been one of my favorite color analysts, and you've been doing games a long time. Can you talk about what made you want to get into broadcasting after such a successful college and pro career?
Yeah, it was really kind of happenstance the way I got involved with the media. In the off season of '82, after our first Super Bowl, I had an off season accident, and my dad had always told me, that the media was important to anybody's career, because he says, no matter how good you are or how bad you are, they will paint your picture. Mm-hmm. And if you don't help them, it's your fault. So, I kind of remembered that not only in high school, but in the UCLA. And I was always told by the reporters starting in college, you talk pretty well. You might want to think about doing stuff like radio and TV. And they'd always said that. And I go, yeah. Well, when I had that accident, I had a friend that was running a radio station that was actually one of the first sports radio type stations in the country, called KSFO. And it was a talk radio format. And he asked me if I wanted to do morning sports. I said, sure, what the hell? So he sent a limo and down to where I was, because I had a cast on my left wrist and I had a cast on my left leg. And he sent me in there to do sports in the mornings. I did that for, about a month. And then after that, I decided, hey, I'd like to do this. Maybe I'll do my own radio show. So I started doing a radio show or filling in there briefly. And then KCBS gave me my own show following Monday Night Football on the West Coast. And yes, it was actually life after Monday Night Football on the West Coast. Because, back then, 9:30, that game was over. And you had people that you could talk to, and it was really cool. I did that. I did TV. I started my own TV show. And then I did some Oakland Invaders games. If you guys remember the USFL.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And so I got a chance to do that with a legendary play-by-play guy from the tennis world and the Olympic world and everything else, a guy named Barry Tompkins. So I did that. And then my last 3 or 4 years, I kept sending the networks my tape. My agent would make a tape at the end of the year of all my interviews and stuff that I did, and he'd send it into the networks. So back then, that was kind of how you did it. You had to be proactive, and you still really do if you're a lineman. Because if you're a quarterback,
they'll come calling.
Your life is pretty much, taken care of for you, and you're a golden child, and they're going to want to talk to you, and they're going to want you to work regardless, whether or not you can talk. If you can play quarterback in the NFL, you're going to get a shot. So as a lineman, I had to be a little bit more proactive. So I did that. I started with CBS. CBS stopped doing football after 5 years that I was there. And that's when Fox started doing the NFC, and then NBC. So I worked there for 4 years. And then when CBS got back into it, I got back into it with them. And I've been with CBS ever since then. So I did 20 years of NFL. And then the last 12 I've done have been college football.
Randy, do more people recognize you as Randy Cross, the football player, or do more people recognize you as Randy Cross, the broadcaster, when you're just out in public?
Probably the latter, and not by a lot. I'd say maybe 60, 70% go broadcaster and 30 or 40 go football, unless I'm in the Bay Area.
Yeah.
Then it's usually football. But it's that and that Miller Lite commercial I did in '89 after I retired. That one thing that did do was that labeled me a center forevermore. I mean, I played my first 2.5 years, I was a center. My last year and a half, I was a center. So a total of 4 years. And the other 9 years, and all my All Pros and all my Pro Bowls and all my All NFCs and all that stuff, that was all at guard, mostly, instead of center. I made a couple second team All NFC and centers, but yeah.
Speaking of you being a center, I reached out to Jesse Sapolo, who we had on a couple weeks ago. He referred to you as his big brother. And I said, hey, Jesse, we're going to have Randy on the show. We like to, do a little research and ask really intentional questions. So I said, do you have any good questions that we could ask Randy? And he said, yeah, ask him why he didn't tell me that he was retiring after Super Bowl 23 and I'd be moving to center.
Yeah, exactly. I didn't tell many people. My wife and very tight circle knew about it. It was time to go. I'd always been a big fan of sports growing up. And if you notice and you pay attention to sports, very few people go out on top. Very few people get a chance to go out on top. I'd seen innumerable teammates and friends over my 13-year career get cut, go to another team, last a couple of years, and then retire. I didn't want to do that. I mean, sure, the money was pretty good, but the guy that was playing on tape, to me, wasn't playing quite as well as I thought he should. And, it seemed like a good time to take a step away, go into my, keep my business going that I had off the field, and then give the media side a shot. But yeah, I let my teammates and my coach know right before the press conference, Super Bowl week.
Oh, wow.
Before I went there and announced it.
Wow.
I was leaving a meeting. I said, "Oh, by the way, coach, I'm going to go here and I'm going to retire." He was like, "What?" He goes, "You can play 2 or 3 more years." I said, "Yeah, I think you're right, but you aren't going to cut me."
Yeah. You don't want to go out like that.
But no, it was, it worked out well.
Yeah.
In fact, they missed me so much, they won the Super Bowl again the next year.
Speaking of that, just transitioning from, you were able to go out on your own terms and everything. What was it like going from playing, you played, your whole life, high school, college, pro, then 13 years in the NFL. What was it like going from that and then transitioning to, no mini camps, no, getting practices and everything like that, getting your brains beat in, your body torn up and everything like that. But what was it like also missing the game? I'm sure you did, transitioning from playing all the time to now you're not.
Yeah. You mean, what was it like to have a real life?
Yeah.
I'd always been involved in the off season in various enterprises, and worked and started companies and did things. So, it was something that I was kind of used to. In the off season, I unplugged. I didn't do stuff that was football related outside of, lifting and training. I loved being that side. And then all of a sudden that was going to become everything. But yeah, I'm lucky. I have no delusions. I've had 2 careers. I played football for 21 years and now I've talked about it for 32 or so.
Wow.
So yeah, it was a little bit on the unusual side.
Yeah, I just want to know, this is something I've always wanted to know with broadcasters and everything like that. How do you prepare to call a game on a Saturday or Sunday? What are some of the things you're looking at? How much tape do you watch? And what statistics are you looking at before you go into calling a game?
Well, you get research packets.
Okay.
From the clubs you're doing. They send you your press release and all their stats. You do some research besides that, stuff that interests you or things that interest you and you maybe want to talk about on air that you can share with your broadcast team, and they can get tape and have stats ready. And you watch a lot of tape. If you have 2 teams, I would say most guys minimum, you watch the last 3 to 4 games they play, in coaches tape.
Wow.
And that gives you a really good idea. I used to watch the TV version too, kind of to almost hear about what other guys are talking about, so I don't repeat stories and whatnot. But I sort of stopped doing that because, you never know what's going to fit where stuff is going to fit.
Yeah.
And that's the thing about, preparing. If you have a 100-pound sack of things that you prepare for going into the game, the one thing you can pretty much count on, 80% of that's still going to be in that sack when you get done. And there's not much you can do about that, but a lot of tape and all that. The weekend's important because you got to work with your crew, your producer, your director, your broadcast associate, your associate director, your play-by-play guy. And that chemistry is really, really important. But the prep wise, there's kind of no way around that. And just so people know, there are no teleprompters in a broadcast booth. At least I've never seen one.
Right.
So there's nothing in front of me that's got stats and names, and people kind of assume that's what goes on.
Yeah.
I mean, you have, this here is your play-by-play guy talking in your headset, and this year is your statistician going, oh, in this situation, they are 37% in the red zone.
Mm-hmm.
No, that doesn't happen. That's either something you've written down as in front of you, or you've kind of stuck in your brain.
Yeah.
And that leaves something that I've always, that it was fun to do at first and has become kind of a chore since then, is after the game, you got to flush your brain. Because all that information you've downloaded for 5 or 6 days.
Yeah.
Now, Monday morning, that stuff
doesn't matter.
Useless.
Yeah.
You got no use for it. And you've got to kind of clean out your brain, all the names and numbers and stats.
Yeah.
And you got to start downloading all over.
Oh, that's a good point. A couple more questions, Randy, about your life after football. Then definitely looking forward to talking about your time with the 49ers. I'd love for you to talk a little bit about your podcast, what that experience has been like. And is there one episode that you could pick out for us? For someone, you know how it is trying out new podcasts for the first time. If there's one episode that you'd like to recommend that kind of, I don't know, you're the most proud of, or your favorite interview or something like that, that you'd recommend for someone trying it out for the first time.
I've got 5 seasons now, and I think the least amount of episodes we had in the season was about 15.
Oh, wow.
So we got a decent amount of backlog. I've done the one thing I would tell people about my podcast is if you go online, go to randycross.com, and the whole library kind of lives there by seasons and everything else. Just scroll through. Because I don't just talk to football people. I don't talk to sports people. I've talked to people all across, all sorts of different categories. I've always been really, really intrigued by the whole concussion and head injury situation, I'll call it, and what's going on with CTE and things like that. So I would strongly encourage people to kind of look at those, go to those episodes. Cause I tend to have not only just interviews, I do different segments, things that I call the wambulance, people crying and whatnot about things, and
food
looking
reviews,
dumb, and happy trails, and sports and barbecue. I put all kinds of different things in my podcast. So of late, I've had to just be interviews because my producers had to make a big career change. So he hasn't had as much time to put into it, but it'll be back at that pretty quick.
Yeah, definitely. That's something I wanted to talk about with you is that you are really into, you're taking a big liking to talking about the CTE and the effects of that and everything like that. And you actually are going to, I saw on your Instagram that you're talking about you're going to donate your brain after you pass and everything like that, to have it researched and to look into it and everything like that. Can you talk a little bit about that? And how many people do you know that it's affected? And honestly, just an honest question, do you notice like effects from it as well?
I don't notice much in the way of effects. And that's really one of the reasons. And I played 21 years of football. I didn't start till the 9th grade. Mm-hmm. Thank God. Thank God I wasn't one of those starting in the 5th grade, banging and getting injuries. And I wouldn't have lasted. I don't think as long. But I was lucky. And I think that's one of the reasons I donated my brain. The organization is Concussion Legacy Foundation. Mm-hmm. They're based out of Boston. Chris Nowinski, who's a former WWF wrestler and Harvard football player, kind of started that whole thing. Dr. Robert Cantu, Ann McKee, another doctor, are incredible researchers into the whole deal. In fact, if you remember, there was a controversy several years ago now where they had 111 donated brains from football players. of all ages and careers and lengths of careers and whatnot. And 110 of them showed signs of CTE. And that's one of the first articles that really got my attention.
Yeah.
Now, was it a bit skewed because they were just football players and certain ages? Yeah, it was.
Sure.
But this CTE issue really exists. And the whole idea of repetitive blows to the brain cuts across all sports. It's not just football. It includes baseball. It includes soccer. It includes basketball. It includes gymnastics. I mean, go across it. Concussions happen everywhere. And we know pathetically little about how this thing up here in our noggin works. And those doctors really do an excellent job. So when I donated my brain, it was all with the idea of, you need some that are, as Marty Feldman in Young Frankenstein said, that are abnormal. Besides the abnormal, you need the normal. And, I'm probably far from normal in that regard, but I'm pretty damn close for 21 years in the league. So when I die, they can have my brain to kind of look at it and go, okay, how come this guy doesn't have stage 4? And this guy over here that played, youth football, high school football, college football, and 2 years in the NFL has stage 4 CTE. Or this soldier over here who was kicking indoors in, Iraq and Afghanistan, and multiple concussive blows, which are just as, that concussive blows are both physically getting hit, and the air can hit you that hard, as we've found out in, so many instances. So you see soldiers are coming down with this too. So it's something that I get kind of passionate about, and I can talk about, obviously.
Yeah.
I drive doctors crazy because I don't know much, but that which I do, I'll ask them about.
Yeah. Obviously you can't take concussions completely out of the game, but do you think the NFL and the NCAA are doing enough to minimize concussions? And are they doing enough for you guys after you're done, after your playing career is over, to help mitigate the health effects of concussions? Are they supporting you guys adequately, do you think?
I'll answer your last questions first.
Yeah.
No, I don't. Well, they hid it for so many years. I mean, those of us, and when I was playing, we never got the chance to make an informed decision because they knew it was bad for us. They knew these things were happening. All these guys that played in the 50s and 60s were starting to have these incidents when I was at the end of my career, which was like 30 years behind me. And the NFL said nothing about it. And it wasn't until about 93 or so that some of the medical establishments started mentioning this, and then get up to around 2000. That's when it really hit. Well, when it really hit, they did some things. Their issues, what they've done has been, they've sprinkled some money on it. They've paid off some families and people that have been affected, and they've really needed it, and they're to be commended for that. But I think it's sort of a token deal personally, and they manage the funds, and their people manage the funds. So who it goes to but that's another issue.
Yeah.
So I think from that standpoint, no, they haven't managed it well. The NCAA has had virtually, nothing against them. Not that I've noticed, which is, it's all focused on the NFL. So, but I will say one thing: on the field, the rule changes, and you guys notice this on TV. The rule changes in college football and the rule changes in the NFL over the course of the last 10 or 20 years have really affected the game, and in a real positive way. They've helped the health of the players. And that, to me, is something they should both be highly commended for, because the game is dangerous. It's still dangerous. It'll never be safe. It can't be safe. It's inherently, I've replaced both my shoulders. And, I have neck issues and things like that. And people ask me, how'd that happen? I said, well, it might be 20 years of running into stuff for a living. I'm not sure. But yeah. So I think the rule changes have been great, because if you look at the size and weight of people that were playing when I played, because I retired, I was 6'3", 290. Mm-hmm. The guy who plays my position right now is probably still 6'3", but he's probably 3 1/4. Mm-hmm. And the guys they're blocking are probably 340.
Yeah.
And can move. And those guys on the outside are 6'6", 250 and run 4.40s. Mm-hmm. Do the physics on that one.
Yeah, right.
When you talk about collisions and force.
Yeah.
So the fact that they've fixed a lot of these problems is really good, because I say this all the time and people cringe, but if they hadn't have made these rules changes, people would have started dying on the football field. Wow. Because of what guys would have done. It wouldn't have been intentional, but that's just sort of would have been the net result.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Randy, do you think there's a chance? Obviously, the game has gotten quicker. No doubt about it. Players are stronger. No doubt about it. Do you think there's a chance that there's something outside of football also happening, where maybe as a society, our brains are more susceptible to concussions? ADD is on the rise, Alzheimer's on the rise, like all these other things outside of football. Our brains in some ways are being, I don't want to say attacked, but they're more susceptible to other stuff. Could there be another factor outside of football, in addition to the harder hits and the faster games, that are making us more susceptible? Now, none of us are doctors here, and I want to clarify that, but I'm just curious if that's a thought that has crossed your mind, since this is a topic you're so passionate about.
Yeah. All those subjects, you can those are pretty deep rabbit holes, as far as Alzheimer's and dementia and those type of things. And they are connected and related to CTE and whatnot. So there's something to be said for the more we know about it and the more we're able to identify things. Like CTE, you can't currently identify it in the living. It's got to be a postmortem diagnosis. But the other ones you can diagnose while still living. I would say the one thing that our brains now are more susceptible to than ever before is suggestion. Information. Are there more ADD cases than in 1970? Yeah. Mm-hmm. I don't know if in 1970 we knew what it was.
Right.
The kids were fidgety back then.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I think the more we know, in a lot of cases, I don't know, the less we know.
Yeah.
But I think the human brain is getting close to overload into what they can process.
That's for sure.
And what they can diagnose themselves, and that's, and I think that's one of the dangerous and challenging things for parents, because, you're looking at a kid growing up in this era. How much do you expose them electronically to what they can and can't see and read and watch and hear and all that? Because that suggestion becomes fact in people's brains pretty fast.
Yeah, really, really good point. We had Austin Eckler on a couple weeks ago. He was actually our first guest, and we're asking him about the 17-game season. And you bring up some really good points about how the game has gotten safer. But I almost wonder, does that kind of get negated when the game is a little bit safer every day, but then you add an extra game? And when we talked to him, he was kind of conflicted. He was like, a lot of the younger players are like, hey, this is a little more money, this is good, but a lot of the older players that have wear and tear already are not happy with that extra game. What are your thoughts about that extra game? And if you were still playing today and that extra game was added, how do you think you'd be feeling?
Well, I'd have one more paycheck, so I'd be excited about that. That's really what it's all about. It's got nothing to do with competitive balance or anything. It's about the money. And there is actually a lot more money out there. So if you think 17 is the limit, you'd be wrong.
Yeah.
You know, they've been playing 20 games for a long time. They've only been counting 16 of them. So as this number ratchets back up, it's a negotiated thing between the Players Association and the NFL. And God knows there's enough money in it for there to be 20 games eventually. And the whole issue of player safety will be addressed, but it's going to be about the money. Mm-hmm. That's kind of what it's based in, and that's what it has been and always has been. And when they start doing these CBAs, and you can tell you're getting close to the end of a CBA when these sort of things start popping up. And a CBA, by the way, is collective bargaining agreement. Mm-hmm. Because when they start extending these things out, it's a negotiation process. So when that money starts getting divvied up, you know, and it's the players and so then you get the older, you know, the old heads like myself, we're the ones that miss checks in 82. So there could be free agency. We're the ones that missed checks in 87. So there could be free agency. There's not much consideration when it comes to that in these negotiations as they've happened over the decades, which is too bad. But, you know, I gave up a long time ago on the fact that, you know, the union was going to do much to anything. You know, I'm of retirement age, so I'm not going to lie and say I'm not drawing money from the union pension fund. But it's not what it's cracked up to be. It's not what people think it is.
Yeah. Speaking of heads, you have an amazing head of hair. I've always admired it. I think it's great. I want to know why you haven't gotten that shit braided yet. You should, man. Just show up on a Saturday afternoon. You got
I never got
some cornrows or something. Why not?
You have no idea how many times I've been on the beach in places like Jamaica and the Bahamas and Cancun and whatnot when I used to take the kids on vacations during spring break.
Yeah.
And at least one of the three kids got their hair braided on those trips.
There you go.
It was always, hey, Dad.
You got to do it. Yeah, why not?
No.
You should.
Well, at times I've had it long enough too.
You got I remember.
Down about here.
Yeah, you got an amazing head of lettuce. You might as well. I think you should. Looks good.
Yeah. I am well coiffed.
Hey, everybody, we just want to take a quick second to tell you about one of our favorite sponsors.
Chad, go fund yourself.
What'd you say to me, man?
Yeah, go fund yourself with life, disability, or Medicare coverage licensed in Texas, Maine, and Colorado. For more information, go to alfonzomurray.com.
And that's ALFONZOMURRAY.com. He also represents AIG, John Hancock, Aetna, Humana, and Cigna. So he's going to find you the best deal he possibly can. And we have it on good authority that he's not pushy. And most insurance guys, they are notorious for being pushy, weird, creepy dudes.
Yeah, I've gotten to know Alfonso a little bit, and he's like the most laid back, chill person. And that's a nice thing to have when you're talking to an insurance guy that's not going to be like following up and just relentlessly hunting you down. They just care about getting your money. He cares about you as a person. So definitely check him out if you're interested in insurance.
You don't want your insurance guy following your girlfriend on Instagram, man. That's creepy as hell. You don't need to do that. It's not going to make me want to buy insurance from you. You know? So talk to Alfonso. He's not going to be creepy. He's not going to be calling you up. He's not going to be texting you relentlessly and everything like that. He's going to be very cool and calm and everything.
Absolutely.
So check out alfonzomurray.com. That's ALFONZOMURRAY.com. I want to ask you, you seem to be an avid golfer, and I saw that you've already had 4 hole-in-ones in your lifetime. Are you playing? I just want to know, are you playing from the junior tees or? Because that's impressive. I play a lot of golf and I still don't have 1 hole-in-one, much less 4. I don't know if I can get some tips. And if you and I ever play together, will you give me 10 strokes and let me tee off from the ladies' tees?
Well, if your pride will let you, go ahead.
Hey, I don't give a shit. I don't give a damn. I'll do it.
And no on the 10 strokes.
I probably need 20.
I started playing golf, kind of beer golf.
Yeah.
When I was in college and then as a pro, on a day off, we'd go over to Half Moon Bay and play golf there. Kind of bring a case of beer, and just drink beer and play golf and hit houses and have fun. But I started playing it seriously after I retired, and I got down to, about a 2 or 3 handicap.
Oh, wow.
Nice.
For a while. And then I started replacing shoulders. And I can tell you, when you start putting titanium in here and here, you will, your handicap will be sorely affected. Yeah. So I'm currently, at least on my course here, I'm a 12 handicap.
Still pretty good.
Yeah.
And, I mean, hole-in-ones I'm not going to lie to you. You don't plan a hole-in-one.
No.
It's just blind ass luck. Because I know pros that have never had a hole-in-one. It's funny to say that, but they may hit it close, but it's never really gone in.
Same. I've had a couple that have come within like a foot or something like that. I count them close enough. I'll take that birdie and everything. But we want to transition now into a little 49er talk. We just obviously like a big topic right now with the 49ers is Trey Lance. And I just want to ask you, as a former 49er, obviously a fan of the team and everything like that, how do you see that competition shaking out? And how long do you think Jimmy Garoppolo is going to be there?
Well, I will say, before this draft happened, I was of the very strong opinion that no matter who they drafted, that person was joining a Super Bowl ready team. That guy was going to join a team that to me was in the top 4 of teams that could go to the Super Bowl. Wow. So you can rank those 4 any way you want. But in my opinion, the Niners are one of those 4 teams based on kind of their recent history, but mainly based on who they have coming back off IR.
Yeah.
Which is almost like they're all pro team.
Yep.
Which is going to have a huge effect on how they play on the field. So having said that, getting Trey Lance, they spent some equity to get him, to get up there, to make that pick. They kind of head faked a lot of people about that, and good for them. The draft's the draft, and sometimes people are smarter than everybody else, and other times they just think they are. But you never really know that until about 3 or 4 years down the road. Right. So as of right now, John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan and Jed York and that organization is just smarter than everybody else. And they've got a quarterback in Jimmy G, has been in a Super Bowl, in case people forget that. And they've got a young guy in Trey Lance that probably in the next year or 2 is going to be their starter. And that's the current reality that Jimmy G lives in. Now, he can either like it, he can hate it, he can be a mentor, he can be a, grumpy old guy, or, it's all kind of up to him. But, the bottom line to me is they're that much better for it. And with a coach like Kyle Shanahan and that staff and their imagination, I think they can find some very intriguing things to do with a Trey Lance on the field as he transitions into what he's going to be.
Oh, yeah. I mean, red zone packages, bringing him in for a play here and there. Now the defenses have to prepare, like the Saints always talk about with Taysom Hill. The defense has to prepare for that package and puts a lot more pressure on them. So I think that's definitely exciting for the 49ers offense. Speaking of the team and the current state of things, Richard Sherman may or may not be coming back to the 49ers. We had on last week Grant Cohn. He's been covering the 49ers for a while. And he had some fairly harsh words to say about Sherman's current game. I disagree with him a little bit. He said Sherman is more of a zone corner than a man corner. And I think that part's true. But he thinks that his days at cornerback are done and that he'd be better suited as a safety. And since you've watched so much tape and you cover you watch the 49ers closely, where do you think, how many more years do you think Sherman has left as a solid starting cornerback?
Yeah, I mean, that's everyone's sort of go-to on most guys that play corner is the fact that they can, you can now be a safety. And it sure as hell worked out pretty well for Ronnie Lott.
Yeah, not bad.
People forget how good he was as a corner earlier in his career.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, it wasn't because he was slow that he got moved. He just had more field to deal with as a safety, and that was a good thing. Maybe that works that way for Richard Sherman. I'm not really sure. I think he's made his money. He's made his career as a corner, and that's where he'll kind of finish his journey. I know he might finish his journey as a Seahawk, only for at least for a day when he signs and retires eventually. But I think he's got value. It's all a health issue. You know, how much will he be available? How much can you count on him? And when you get older and start getting hurt, you know, teams make alternative plans. And sometimes you're not in it. It ain't personal.
Yeah.
You know, kind of like the Godfather movies. It's not personal. It's business.
Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about Joe Montana? For a long time, he was considered the greatest quarterback in NFL history. And then Tom Brady has kind of taken that claim. What are some of the ways that you see that they're similar in your mind? And also, I want to put you on the spot and tell me who you think is a better quarterback right now.
You know, I'll say one thing. You'd never hear Joe Montana claim that.
Oh, really? Yeah.
So that's a thing. Yeah. That ain't the way he's built.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
But look, I've got a lot of jewelry because of Joe Montana.
Yep.
He was 4-0 in Super Bowl, as in 4 wins and 0 losses.
Yeah.
Yep.
And certain quarterbacks can't say they have 0 losses.
True story.
He threw 11 touchdowns and no interceptions in the Super Bowls. So to me, some of that counts, but I think it also is short-sighted. We get, so this is the media especially, but sports in general is the church of what's happening now.
Yeah.
And now it's about him. It's about Brady. But, you know, in the mid-'60s, it was about Bart Starr.
Yep.
Wow.
In the 50s, it was about Otto Graham. In the 80s, it was 70s and 80s, it was about early 80s, it was about Terry Bradshaw. He was 4-0.
Mm-hmm.
So every kind of era as we move along has got their guy. And the one thing that makes it even more confounding is there's no rational way to actually compare eras.
Yeah.
It's like pass rushers.
Mm-hmm.
How do you compare LT to pick a guy?
Miles Turner,
2021 or 2020.
Yep.
You know, it's not possible. You can't do that. You know, you can look at certain things like versatility at running back. You can look at there's certain generation skippers that jump out. They just jump out. From the start of their career to the end of their career, they just make you sit up and go, dang. You know, Jerry Rice was a generation skipper.
Mm-hmm.
Jim Brown was a generation skipper. Lawrence Taylor was a generation skipper. Plenty of guys. You know, I would consider personally a guy like Derrick Henry isn't a generation skipper. He's kind of like a generation throwback. He's a guy that could have played in the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, the 80s. You pick a decade, Derrick Henry could play in it. And that's makes him a highly unusual guy in today's game.
Yeah, I might say Frank Gore kind of in that same mold. I think Frank would have done okay back then as well. That bruising style.
He played in the 50s, didn't he?
He seemed like it, yeah.
Oh, good stuff. Hey, speaking of Joe, I know you've been asked this question before, but I can't resist. Can you walk us through the catch? One of the most iconic plays in NFL history. You were on the field for it. I'd love if you could walk us through. And 2, obviously, you knew at the time that was a big game. Obviously, because it meant going to the Super Bowl. 49ers dynasty was starting. Yeah. But did you appreciate at the moment that was going to be, one of the biggest moments in the history of the NFL? Still, all these years later, did you appreciate it at that time?
No, I don't think anybody did. I'm not going to lie to you. It just, it was big to us because we had beaten the snot out of them earlier in the season, and we didn't get any credit for it. That play is iconic because it is basically considered like kind of the genesis point for a team and an organization that for almost 20 years was dominant in the NFL.
Mm-hmm.
But, we had played, I mentioned that game earlier against Dallas. We had our first touchdown against Dallas in the early season game was on that play, sprint right option. One of our first touchdowns in that game against Dallas was sprint right option. So sprint right option was the name of the play that was called. And it's built like you've got an X receiver on the outside, Dwight Clark, and he's going to run down, go across the end line, and then work back. And you've got the slot, Freddie Solomon runs a quick little pattern, and it's Joe is a short roll, and I do mean a short roll. And for those of you that may have played offensive line, when you're getting that thought in your brain, okay, where's the quarterback? I got to know where I'm protecting. He's supposed to be behind the tight end. So you're going to start sliding, but you're not going to slide too far because you don't want the guy to come underneath you. So we're sliding. Keith Fahnhorst and I are sliding with our guys, and they keep going. And we're like, where's he going? And we kind of look over, and Joe is like sprinting to the sideline. And he throws that pass. I'm looking right straight down the field, had a great view of it. Dwight just jumped up out of nowhere. Contrary to popular opinion, Joe was not throwing that away. Sorry, Cowboy fan. Because I had spent off seasons playing with he and Joe. They could both play basketball. They could both get up and jump. And that was no mistake. Joe was throwing that ball where only he knew DC could get it. And DC went up and got it. And that play, it ended a lot of misery for those of us that had a point of reference. Because I had won 9 games my first year, 5 games my second year, 2 games my third, 2 games my fourth, 6 games my fifth. So that was my point of reference on long time winning. It didn't exist.
Yeah.
So we won like crazy that year. We won that game. And it's one of my favorite things to look at because I'll occasionally see the video on social media of the post-game scene. Everybody watches the catch. If you watch after Eric Wright pulls down Drew Pearson, because they almost scored a touchdown afterwards, and the game is over, the scene with the police on the horses, and the fans, and it was bedlam. And most of the players involved didn't hang around to celebrate with the fans. It was kind of scary. Everybody was hauling ass to get off the field and get to the locker room.
Can you give us insight what the locker room was like?
It was sort of that nexus point.
Can you give us insight? I mean, the cameras caught the moment that you're describing where the fans were on the field. Fans don't know what it was like in the locker room immediately after the game. I mean, what was Bill Walsh like? What were you feeling at that time? I mean, do you remember anything that anybody said to anybody that you can give us some insight into the emotion and the feelings that were going on at that time?
Not for a family style audience.
Fair enough.
It was a celebration like you could imagine. Because we had not won that much. I think the prevailing theme was we knew it was kind of unfinished business. We had dealt with Dallas. Now we were going to get a chance to play Cincinnati again. We had beaten them earlier in the year. At their place. And so we were getting a chance to play the Bengals in the Super Bowl, which was hard to wrap your head around because how bad we had been just so recently to that. Now, suddenly we were going to the Super Bowl, but we had fallen into what I always refer to as next mode. And that was, as soon as the game was over, it was like, okay, what's next? Who's next? And it happened to be the Bengals. It made that Super Bowl a little weird because when we won that one and we were on the bus listening to music and singing songs and celebrating, and we kind of looked at each other about next and went, there is no next. Next is the Pro Bowl, and then we're done.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was a great experience, but it was something that I think, not being familiar with the whole winning and how to do it and whatnot, it challenged a lot of us in that regard, because we had at least a dozen or so players that didn't get cut the next year, that sort of cut themselves by how they acted off the field.
Yeah. So you said you guys were singing and dancing and everything after that. I've checked out your Twitter, your Instagram, and everything like that. You seem to be a big Michael Jackson fan. I just want to know, before you go on air, are you in the you're in the press box doing a little moonwalk?
Where in the hell did you get that?
You didn't. You weren't.
Hell did you get
I thought you posted a couple Michael Jackson songs. I was going back though. I mean, maybe you were just in a certain mood or some shit. I don't know, but it seemed like
it might have been a mood.
Yeah,
it might have been a mood.
Yeah.
I was more of a rock and roll.
Oh, really?
All right.
I flopped between hard rock, a little bit of the other rock, which at that point was like Queen and the Eagles and Huey Lewis and whatnot, all the way over to country and Willie Nelson. But no, Michael Jackson.
Not a fan.
Not a huge. I mean, I appreciated the fact that he had a lot of successful music, but I wasn't a huge fan.
Okay.
Hey, you brought up Willie Nelson. You brought up barbecue really quickly earlier, and now we're talking about live music. I got to ask, if you've spent time in Austin, where we're based, have you spent much time here?
Yes. I used to play every year in a golf tournament put on by Doug English.
What course did you guys play at?
Come down and terrorize downtown Austin and have a great time before we'd head up to the Lakeview Cafe, an old establishment that's no longer there, and some other places.
What course did you play at in Austin? Do you remember?
I want to say, I think it was at, eventually it was it the Hills?
Yeah, okay.
That's in the Austin area, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. It was there. Later on it was there, but it was somewhere around a lake. I do remember that. Most of the fun was not at the golf.
Yeah, it was afterwards.
The nightlife scene here is pretty good, pretty robust.
That was during my beer golf period.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, I don't know if you've been here in a while. We've got a great place called Still Austin. It's a whiskey distillery, and we send all our guests that come on the show a bottle of bourbon. So you can look forward to that in the mail. So after the show, I'll email you and ask for your address. That'll be coming along the way. But I want to talk to you a little bit about the Hall of Fame, Randy, and you not being in the Hall of Fame. Chad and I both have had extensive conversations, and we feel like you should be. And we want to know what we got to do to bang the table and make this happen to get you in the Hall of Fame. And is this something that's on your mind, knowing that you put so much time and effort into your career, and that's an added step of recognition that you haven't gotten yet?
Yeah. Do you want us to start? We can threaten some people if you want. We don't care.
That's what it might take.
Yeah, we could.
No. I learned a long time ago, and I've had some great teachers, from Steve Butler in high school to Terry Donahue in college to Bob McKittrick and Bill Walsh in the pros, and innumerable people in business and whatnot since then. To not dwell on or worry about things I have no control over. And that would be, in my world, pretty high on the list of things I got no control over. I can't play more games. I can't do a lot of things. Legacy is legacy. I don't, I know kind of how it worked at the time. I know we were not terribly popular, especially with the media. that was all about the NFC East and smash mouth football and all that stuff back in those days. And we were sort of usurpers into that whole system. And, for a long time, that whole process was run by people that were birthed out of that. So, I've been through the eligibility period. I've been in the senior category for obviously quite some time. No, it's I think it's well put to say there are several people that deserve to be in there. They've done a really, really nice job the last couple of years with these larger classes of fixing any kind of backlog and whatnot. But, to be honest, I love my career. I love my team. I love Eddie DeBartolo and Joe and Roger and Jerry and Ronnie and all them that are, lifelong friends. But, I could give two shits what those people really think of my career or how I played or anything else. I don't need
the writers you're talking about, right? The voters
validation.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I don't need their validation. Right. I don't get it. So what a coincidence. But, I don't happen to dwell on it. I get asked about that about every year when this subject kind of heats up. Mm-hmm. I don't pay much attention to it. I thought the player that dealt with it the best over the last couple of decades was Harry Carson, who basically gave them all a single digit salute. Shortly thereafter he got in, but I thought that was the best response because really it's as it always has been. What's the qualification? I'll ask you guys a question. Should you be all pro or is it Pro Bowl? What has more more influence? Is it all NFC, all AFC?
Right.
I look at people all the time and they say, well, Pro Bowl is much more important. I said, well, at certain positions, there's 6 guys that make the Pro Bowl, but there's only 2 all pros.
Yep.
So which is more of an identifier?
All pro, certainly.
And if you have 6 guys at one and you go like first and second team all pro, that's only 4 guys at some position.
Yeah.
And if you play quarterback, there's only 1.
Yeah.
That position. My son Brendan played quarterback in youth and high school and college. And I always told him, I did a throwback to him. I'd say, go look at the old Highlander movie. And the whole theme in that is there can be only one. I said, you're playing a position where there can be only one. Mm-hmm. So only one of you is going to play. And those are the truly challenging spots and positions to quantify. Linemen are, you got to know what you're talking about for one thing. And, there's not that many people on the earth drawing breath that really know what they're talking about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with that. I want to ask you just a few more questions before we let you go. But you said that you retired and then the 49ers won the Super Bowl the next year. Was there any regret on your part thinking like, if I'd have stayed one more year, I could have got a 4th ring or what have you? Or were you satisfied and you thought, no, I hung it up when I needed to and I didn't want to put my body through another year of that?
I mean, hell yeah. How do you not? Especially, I had signed a contract with CBS that said I was going to do like 7 games. Well, I ended up doing 15. I ended up working with the NFL Today on the sideline for the divisional playoff game and the NFC Championship game. So I had a chance to be there. I was on the field at Candlestick watching warmups for the NFC Championship game, saying to myself, you're an idiot. You left too soon. Yeah. You could be on this team and you would be winning another Super Bowl because it was pretty obvious they were going to beat the crap out of whoever they played.
Denver, yeah.
And they did with the Broncos.
Yeah.
But 2 weeks later, I was in New Orleans because I was doing a bunch of media stuff with CBS. And the morning before the game, I got a call from Frank Murphy, who was running CBS radio at that point. And he says, hey, are you available to do the game tomorrow? And I sat up in bed because it was like at 8 o'clock in the morning in New Orleans. 8 o'clock in the morning, by the way, like 4 a.m.
Yeah.
In most other cities.
You get ready to go to bed.
So 8 o'clock in the morning, I go like, say what? You want me to what? And he goes, yeah. Hank Stram has done as many public appearances and speaking engagements as he can, and he's got no voice now. He's lost his voice completely. And we don't know how long he'll last during the game. And we want you to be there because you got to sit in for him. So I got a chance to, my first year out of the league, do a Super Bowl on the radio. But
cool
man,
story.
I was sitting there watching Roger and Jerry and Joe, and my old guys on the line, and that team just shred Denver. And I can't tell you how many times during commercial breaks I'm like looking down. You are a dummy. You are a dummy.
You started.
So yeah.
Hey, 3 rings aren't bad though.
Yeah.
3 rings aren't bad at all.
No, the only thing better than 3 is 4.
Yeah. You started calling that game in the third quarter, right? That Super Bowl.
Yeah, beginning of the second half.
It was just such a blowout. Hank was just like, I'm getting out of here. I'm about to go party. This is bullshit. Probably.
Yeah. It was actually it was Neil Pilson.
Okay.
I was in the hallway because they were doing halftime, and I was in the hallway above where the radio booth was, just chilling. And I saw this guy striding down the hall. I'm going, that looks like Neil Pilson. He got closer. I said, that is Neil Pilson. He looks at me and goes, what in the hell are you doing out here? I went, well, they're working in there and I'm not.
Yeah.
So I was out here just kind of taking a break. He goes, come on, you're going on the air.
Wow.
So he takes me in the booth and he's signaling at Hank going, you out, you out, like this. And he tells me to sit down on the second row. He goes, put that headset on.
Wow.
And they cut off Hank's headset. And then Jack Buck starts talking to me. And I'm like, I don't want to make eye contact. Because I knew Hank pretty well. And I'm saying, I don't want to. This is not my fault. I didn't do this. But yeah, it was very uncomfortable initially, the way it happened. But it was very memorable.
Wow, that's a great story right there. Going back to your playing days, Randy, can you tell us maybe a couple of defensive linemen that were always the toughest for you to go up against? Was there anybody that you knew you'd have to bring a little extra that day because you were going up against them?
Well, yeah, I was lucky enough to play against some of the all-time greats early in my career. I played against Merlin Olsen. I played against Alan Page. Guys like that. Matchups are always different, because the guys I had the hardest time with were guys like Steve McMichael and Joe Klecko, who were the shorter, quicker, really, really strong guys. That maybe played kind of like I played guard. And that was what made the matchup rough. Because there's always people, and it's usually not a high profile guy for most guys. It's just somebody with a match. It's like boxing.
Yeah.
There's always a bad match in boxing. And it's rarely number 1 versus number 2. It's usually like number 1 versus number 27.
Yeah.
It's just not a good match physically. But yeah, in fact, Merlin Olsen, I played early in my career. Back in high school, he gave me my All-CIF award in Southern California.
Oh,
before the Pro Bowl started in the Coliseum. 5 years later, we're shaking hands in pregame before the coin toss on a Monday night football game. And I say, "Good to meet you, sir." And he looks at me and kind of shakes his head and goes, "Man, I'm getting old." And we won that game really, really convincingly that year. And then now fast forward again, my last year in '88, we're in London, and he and Dick Enberg are doing the game for NBC. And we're talking in the locker room. He sits down next to me in 10 minutes or so, having a conversation. He gets up and leaves. Rookie, whose locker is right there next to me, comes back and sits down. And he looks at me and goes, "Man, that is cool." I said, "Yeah, I played against that guy when I was a rookie." And he looked at me and goes, Father Murphy played football? And I said, oh, God. Yeah, Father Murphy played football for a long time. You ever hear of the fearsome foursome? That was part of the fearsome foursome.
There you go.
That's awesome.
I just want to ask you one more. We want to ask you one more question here before we let you go. One of the hottest topics in the NFL right now, as a broadcast, I want to get your opinion as a broadcaster and as a former player. One of the hottest topics right now is Aaron Rodgers, and I just want to know what you think is going on there, and if you think he's justified in wanting out of Green Bay at this moment.
Well, I know that however it is they've handled this situation, if you're in the NFL front office, you might want to take note of it, write it down, and don't do that with your guys. So that's been handled, I think, really poorly. Yeah, he's a MVP. He's a quarterback. He's been in the league forever. He's been highly successful forever. He's a little bit of a prima donna, whether he'll admit it or not. So, did they handle him with kid gloves? No. But I tell you what, there's a long list, and a longer list than people would admit, of teams that would love to have Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah.
It's a you look at the situation the Packers are in, though. Look at how many years he's been in the league. Look at how many yards he's thrown for, how he's played. You give him another contract, you extend him for 3, 4, 5 years and take on that load, because it ain't going to be easy. It ain't going to be a small amount.
Right.
Yeah.
It's going to be right there with the young guys as far as how much he's going to make. And that can be crippling for an organization, potentially, if you don't get X number of years out of it on the other end. So, now that I'm just doing college football and not in the NFL, it's more amusing than anything else. But my educated guess would be Aaron Rodgers plays somewhere else.
Wow.
And the Packers look like it when they start taking the field. Because I tell you what, Aaron Rodgers is no Jordan Love.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. I think that they handled that situation incredibly wrong. I think that as soon as they drafted Jordan Love, they put they started the clock on Rodgers' career, and with a guy that's that accomplished and that good, still, you can understand why he got a little pissed off. I probably would too. I get it because Jordan Love.
Well, it's only happened twice. It's only happened twice in NFL history now, where organizations have gone back-to-back quarterbacks. That are Hall of Fame, title winning. It's only happened twice. And Montana and Young, and Favre and Rodgers.
Yeah, that's true.
And if you think it's about to go 1, 2, 3,
probably not.
No, you're wrong. Yeah. And that's not a knock. That's not a knock on Jordan Love.
Yeah,
right.
That's just That's just reality.
Historical facts.
That ain't gonna happen.
Yeah.
So. Yeah, just facts.
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting to see what happens there, because if he refuses to play or says he's going to retire or something like that, it's going to put them in a really awkward position.
Yeah, for sure.
But Randy, this is awesome.
Thank you.
But it'll be Jeopardy's game.
Yeah, there you go. This has been a great interview, brother. I've always wanted to talk to you, and like I said, I've been listening to you call games for years and years, man. So this is awesome to talk to you. You've always been one of my favorite broadcasters.
Thank you.
We learned a lot about you today, and it was really awesome. We learned do not call you a Michael Jackson fan, or he will beat your ass. God damn, Randy, just chill out, man. I swear to God. Won't do that again. He's a Huey Lewis and the News fan, everybody. Calm down.
There's a lot of reasons
That's fair.
That have nothing to do with football.
It's all good. It's all good, brother.
Hey, people should go to randycross.com. Check out your awesome podcast. It's rcross51 on Instagram and at randycrossfb on Twitter. So make sure you give him a follow. So happy to have you on today. Thank you so much for your time, Randy.
Brother.
No worries, guys.
Take care,
brother.
Thanks.
That's Randy Cross.
All right, guys. Thanks
see you later.
Lot.
Yep. Randy Cross, 3-time Super Bowl winner with the San Francisco 49ers. He's had, like he said in the interview, man, he's had 2 careers. He had the NFL career for 13 years, and then now he's been a broadcaster since 89, I think. So one of those rare guys that's able to cross over and be super talented and accomplished in both areas.
And he's great at both. I mean, he didn't mention names, but he kind of alluded to, you know, if you're a quarterback, you don't even have to really be good in the booth and you'll get a job. But he's good. I mean, he is really, really good at what he does. You can tell he's well prepared. He calls a good game. And
there's been so many times where I've been watching games and I'm like, dude, I really like that color analyst, you know?
Yeah.
And it'll take me a second because there's so many color analysts and everything. If you've got like the NFL package like I do, like I get every year, you don't know what the hell game you're watching half the time or you know who's calling it or whatever. And so there's been many times when I've been watching the game and I'm like, dude, I like this color analyst, man. And I'm like, oh shit, that's Randy Cross. He's been doing this forever.
Yep.
So that's awesome to be able to talk to him and talk about both of the careers that he's had.
Yeah. No, he's very, very well good at what he does. And he had some great stories about, you know, calling that Super Bowl, jumping in the third quarter, kind of coming in relief. That was pretty cool to hear.
That's crazy. That's probably never going to happen again, you know?
Yeah. And I love, dude, how about him walking through the catch? How cool was that, man?
Yeah. And the post-game celebration afterwards.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. What a cool dude, man. What an awesome career too.
Yeah.
And also like the stuff that was interesting about the CTE that he's really heavily involved in. If you go to his Instagram and Twitter, you'll see that he talks about that quite often. And I think that's something that we definitely need to be having conversations about because it is an issue. And the NFL has done a lot to help mitigate some of the injuries that occur and everything like that. Some people will say like all the games, you know, get watered down and everything like that. At the same time, man, you want to see the best players play. You know, I definitely think you should be able to hit the quarterback a little bit more. But at the same time, you want to see the best players play, and you don't want to watch a Super Bowl if they got a second string quarterback in. If you know, I don't know, Brian Hoyer's starting or something like that, no one's going to tune in. So. I agree with him on that, and it's going to be interesting to see what the NFL continues to do if they're just paying lip service, if they're actually going to help some of these former players and some of the problems that they're going through and everything. You
say lip service. He used the word token in terms of you know the things that they're doing, and he was very generous to give the NFL credit for a lot of the on the field things, but he also kind of alluded to the NFL maybe wanting to give the illusion that they're doing more than they actually are.
Yeah.
And I really liked because it's refreshing to hear a former NFL player kind of call the NFL out a little bit. And so that was refreshing to hear as well, that it's very money driven, some of these decisions, like to have a 17 game season. It's funny when players are playing, they really do kind of they're censored in a way. They can't talk about the officiating. You know what I mean? They can't say anything too controversial when they're being interviewed in the locker room. But it's interesting after players retire and you can tell they feel a little more free to say certain things.
Yeah, he don't give a shit. He'll say whatever he wants.
Which I appreciate and respect about him a lot, for sure.
Yeah, because you get so many times in interviews when you're talking to athletes and stuff like that, they're always so measured and calculated and everything like that. Randy doesn't give a shit. Yep. If you don't believe me, go to his Twitter and his Instagram, man. He goes in on some people. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah, no, he's a great interview for sure. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah, it was, man. It was. I think we've hit almost every 49ers player in history on this podcast so far.
Yeah, we should clarify that this is not a 49ers show. We've got some great guests lined up. We've got guests from other sports, from other football teams as well, but we have been a little 49er heavy, and that's just kind of the way it's shaken out so far.
We got lucky. We got some great guys that played there, but it is an iconic franchise. But yeah, I promise you we will cover some other teams other besides the 49ers and shit.
Well, and in fairness too, you and I have talked a lot about how the 49ers are a very much talked about football team. Leading up to the draft, it was who are they going to draft? They were the key piece with that number 3 pick. And people are talking about the 49ers right now, and we want to cover the popular topics that people are talking about. So it's fun to have Jesse Sapolo, Grant Cohn, and now Randy Cross on to talk about how they feel about Trey Lance, et cetera.
When we get someone on here that's not from the 49ers, people are going to lose their shit. Like, what the hell?
What's going on, man? I thought you guys were doing 49ers. We're kind of dug up Bill Walsh or something. What the hell's going on?
So we'll have some other people on, I promise you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Great day though, man.
Yeah, definitely. Hey, before we wrap up, we want to remind you about Oddsshark. Oddsshark is your source for the latest odds from leading authorities, expert editorial content, and detailed matchup picks. Looking for statistics and trends for an upcoming game? Oddsshark has that too, and it is absolutely free.
That's right. They have in-depth expert analysis, stats, numbers, and trends to help you make the sharp game day picks. So whether you want to check out tonight's odds or this weekend's hockey or basketball trends or anything in between, head over to Oddsshark and start thinking like a shark today.
Yeah, and that's ODDSSHARK.com. They are a go-to resource for us here at DNP-CD. I'm on there every day checking out lines and then comparing lines and everything like that, making sure you get the best number. We got a lot of sports coming up here now, man. This is like a awesome time for sports. We got NBA playoffs getting ready to start. We got baseball. It's already a quarter of the way through the season.
Mm-hmm.
We got hockey playoffs. You got some boxing coming up later in the summer. It's an interesting time to throw some money down. You should, man, because there's some good lines out there, and especially with baseball. Don't really know what's going on right now. A lot of parity in baseball this year.
Yep. Yeah, and they'll give you odds on stuff you didn't even mention. I mean, tennis, NASCAR, all sorts of stuff.
And they've got great editorial content, like we said. I was on there last night reading about the boxing matchups and everything like that that's coming up. They've got great information. It makes you confident going into making these picks, I think. Yeah, make sure to check out Oddsshark.com. That's ODDSSHARK.com. And we want to encourage everybody. That was a great show, a great episode. We want to encourage everybody to check us out on social media. We've been found on Instagram at DNP-CD Sports, also on Twitter at DNP-CD Sports. You're going to see that on your screen probably right now. Also, head on over to hotpiemedia.com. You can find all of our previous episodes. You can find also a bunch of other awesome podcasts with basically any subject you can think of. Hotpiemedia.com has a great array of podcasts, and anything else that might interest you, you want to check that out.
Yeah, for sure. Like Chad said, give us a follow, give us a thumbs up if you happen to be watching on YouTube, and
leave us a review too.
Give us a review on please. iTunes and all those other sources. We'd love that.
Yeah, I will kiss you for a review. Open mouth kiss. I'm handing out open mouth kisses for reviews, people. So if you ever see me and say, hey man, I gave you guys a review, and I'm like, all right, come
We're
here.
never getting another review again.
Let's go in the bathroom for a second. We don't want to do this out here in front of everybody and shit. You know what I'm saying? But thanks everyone for listening. Thanks for watching. Please tell your friends about the show. We'll be back next week with another awesome guest, most likely. And I'm Chad Fisher for Tony Farmer.
Signing off. Take care, y'all.
Peace, guys.
Thanks for listening. You can find more episodes and all other Hot Pie Media originals baked fresh daily at our home on the web at hotpiemedia.com, the Hot Pie Media YouTube channel, or wherever you listen to podcasts.